Hello, my name is Steven, and welcome to my tutorial where we have installed the Abyss web server from Apellium on Debian Linux. We've already installed the web server, and here's the console, which is how we manage the settings for the server. And then we've also installed PHP on the server, and we have integrated it with Abyss, and so PHP is successfully running. And today we're going to talk about installing MySQL. And so you can see I'm logged in here as user, and there's a command that we can issue that will tell us about all the packages that we have already installed on our server, and I've already copied it to my clipboard. By the way, you can grab that command here at this URL. It'll take you straight to this answer on this Stack Exchange website, and you can just copy and paste it right here. And you can save it in Notepad and use it later. And this gives us all the packages we've installed so far. Now I'll break down what it does. The package manager will keep log files in this directory, the varlog apt directory. And what it does is it stores the information about what you install in this file here, the history.log file. Now, what happens is every month it is going to dump that information into a history.log then a number and then a gz file. It zips the file down using gzip, and that just compresses it so it takes less space. Now what defines when that happens? It's called log rotation. And here's the file that defines that, the etc/logrotate.d/apt. And so this file here tells us it rotates it monthly. We're dealing with the history log rather. So it does it monthly, and it will keep 12 copies. And so that means that it will keep a year's worth of history about the package manager and what it's been doing. And so the first command is zcat, and it looks through all of these files, the history.log.whatever-number.gz, and so it's actually dumping out multiple files onto the standard output, which is the terminal here. And then it pipes it, so it takes all the output from this command, and the pipe dumps it into this command, which is the cat command, very similar to zcat. Zcat just deals with gzipped files. And so cat will display a file for us in our command prompt here in our terminal. And so the dash just stands for everything that was dumped into it via the pipe command. In other words, the zcat command, cat will dump out all the input that it received from zcat. And it will also then, when that's done, dump out the contents of the history.log file. But all that is then piped again into a command called grep. Grep does a regular expression search, and so you specify some parameters, and then you specify what you want it to look for. And so it's looking for, in any of these files, a line that the character means begins with, command line, :apt-get install. And then it will find the package name of everything we've installed, and it will dump that in the output of our terminal here. So the first line is an error line because, well, we haven't been running this server for more than a month yet, and so there is not a rotated history log file. And so these other three lines are telling us the packages we've installed. We've installed sudo, ACL, the access control lists, then all the PHP stuff. Now today we're going to install a list of packages that I like to have on every server, and then we'll install MySQL. And so I'm going to go ahead and type in the command apt-get install. This list will be just a standard suite of packages that I like to have on all of my servers. And so we're going to include the packages apt-transport-https. That will allow us to get our packages over an encrypted connection to the package server. Net-tools, and this will allow us to print the routes for our server, the IP routes. We want to install TCP dump. You can import those files into Wireshark, so you can look at the packets that are flowing in and out of your server. Very handy. Nload. Nload will tell us how much bandwidth is coming in and going out of our server in real time, and it works in the console. We're going to install DNS utils. You're going to install LFTP. You can use that in your scripts if you want to upload a file or download an FTP file. Very handy command to have. BMON stands for bandwidth monitor. dstat, that will tell us in real time how much data is being written to our hard drive or being read from our hard drive. Gives you a lot of system information in real time. And then there's MTR, and this is a trace route and ping utility all wrapped up into one. Very handy for diagnosing internet connection issues. HTOP is similar to top. I'm not sure if I explained that very well yet, but the top command will tell us about our processes and which ones are running and how much CPU they're requiring at that moment. And HTOP is an improved version of that, and it will tell us about our processes, and we can sort it, we can scroll, and so it just gives you a lot more functionality than the original top. Then if you want to use zip files and you want to have 7-zip support also, we want to install p7zip-full, and then we can work with a lot of different compressed file formats. And then we have rsync. Rsync is used for backup purposes if you want to synchronize a directory with a remote location. Now, we're running as users, so what do we have to do? We've got to type sudo in front of our command, and then it'll go ahead and get busy. And if you want to know more information about any of these particular utilities, just do apt show and then the name of the package. All right, so let's go ahead and install these. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to take 90.9 additional megabytes of space, and that's all right. So Y, enter. Okay, everything has finished installing. We'll go ahead and clear our screen just so we're working with a clean slate again by typing in the clear command. And then we're going to go ahead and install MySQL. apt-get install MySQL. And it's actually MySQL-server. And we need to prefix it with sudo. And we're going to need 194 megabytes of additional space. MySQL is big. You say yes, and we'll begin the installation process. It's creating services. All right, we have installed the package default MySQL-server. Now, something interesting you may notice here, it says MariaDB-server 10.1. What is that all about? Well, the MySQL package actually refers to the MariaDB server. What's that? MariaDB actually is somewhat of a fork of the MySQL server because the company named Oracle bought MySQL and they continue to manage it and maintain it. But the creator of MySQL didn't like the direction they were going. And well, the nice thing about Linux, when the source code is open source, anyone can create a fork of the original software package. And so that's what they did. So MariaDB has been the default of Debian now. And so that's actually what we have installed is MariaDB-server. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same as MySQL. It really gets down to nitty-gritty to look for differences between the two. All right, so it should be running. We can find out about that by typing netstat-anpe and pipe that into grep, and we want to search for 3306 because that is the port number that MySQL runs on. And we can see that we are listening now on 3306, which again is the MySQL port, and so we're running. And we can actually also get the status by typing sudo service MySQL status. And there you'll see, again, it's MariaDB actually. So it's up and running, it's ready to go. We have installed it. Now I will say one thing, the default settings that MySQL installs with are not necessarily the most secure settings. And so what do we need to do if we want to secure our installation? Well, we have a handy dandy script already that will harden the MySQL server for us. Sudo MySQL _secure installation. Enter current password for root. Now notice this is for MySQL. We'll need the current password for the root user. If you've just installed MariaDB and you haven't set the root password yet, which is our scenario, the password will be blank, so you should just press enter here. Now it's asking you, do you want to set the root password? Of course we do. We do want a root password, so we type Y. And again, like with the root user account in Linux, you really want a good, strong password for root because it has any privileges, and there are hackers looking for it all the time. You need to pick something incredibly secure, maybe 10 digits long, include letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, different things like that. I'm just going to pick something relatively simple for my demonstration, but you should pick a good secure password. Re-enter that password. By default, a MariaDB installation has an anonymous user. You should remove them before moving into a production environment. So, remove the anonymous users? Yes. Disallow root login remotely. This is a really, really good idea. And so we should disable root login remotely so that if someone connects from the internet or even from the LAN, they can't log in as root. Remove test database and access to it. Again, that's a good idea. Y enter. Reload the privilege tables now. Yes. All right, all done. Everything is much more secure. We'll go ahead and clear our screen here and we can log in for the first time. So let's go ahead and do that now. If we type MySQL, we get an error message, access denied for user root at localhost. There's a reason for that. There's only one account set up right now because we deleted the test accounts when we hardened MySQL. So there's only a root account, the root at localhost account. And we did not specify a password. In fact, we can't even log in as the root user under the user Linux user. And so what we have to actually do is type sudo so that we're running it as root, or we could log in as root, and then we can run MySQL. Now you notice I just entered MySQL without entering the root password. And so the reason that is because the root Linux account can log into MySQL without having to enter a password. That's just the way it's set up. And so you want to, again, make sure that your password for your root account in Linux is very secure. All right, so here we are on the MySQL command line, and I'll show you all the users that are set up on this MySQL server. And of course, there's only one. Select user and host from mysql.user. And then we end the command with a semicolon, and here's our answer. There's only one account, root, and the host is localhost. And so root can only log in from localhost right now. Now we need to create a second user. We're going to create a second user that has all the privileges of the root account. Create user, and we'll just call him full perm. For full permissions, we're going to set the host here at 127.0.0.1, which is the same as localhost. Identified by, and this is where you're going to type your password in between these quotes. The quotes are not part of the password, they just demark where the password is. Alright, so let's go ahead and set a good password. You'll see it's going to appear on the PuTTY terminal, and so you'll see your password as you're typing it. We're going to give this user full permission, so you want to have a very good password. And so I'm just going to type in ASDF QWERTY. That's a horrible password. You should pick something much, much stronger, but just for demonstration purposes. Okay, the user has been created. Now I can type the up arrow like I can on the regular command line, and it shows me my past commands that I've entered. And so now we're going to run this command again, and you'll see we now have 2 users listed. That user can't do anything yet, the full perm user. What we have to do is give it privileges. And so I'm going to go ahead and put my caps lock on, because everything you type, for the most part, is going to be uppercase. So we're going to type grant all privileges on **** to, now we specify our user, which is lowercase, full perm at 127.0.0.1, and we're going to specify with grant option. You'll notice what I'm doing right now is a grant procedure, and we're going to give the full perm user the grant option. And so what that means is that the full perm user will then be able to create new users and decide what privileges they will receive. And so the full perm user has the full power of the root user. And so just wanted to make that clear. So we go ahead and hit enter, and that will be complete. All right, so that is done, and now we can exit our database by typing quit, and we're back to the command line. Now you'll notice when we specified permissions, root was already created for us, and that can only be accessed by localhost, and full perm can only be accessed by, well, the numerical equivalent to localhost. And so that means if you try to log in from your Windows machine, you're not going to be able to do it. You say, but I want to use a GUI to manage my SQL server. Well, there's a trick to that. I'm going to show you a program that you should download, and it's my favorite program to use for this, and it is called HeidiSQL. And it's at HeidiSQL.com, and you just go to the downloads page. And I went ahead and grabbed the portable 64-bit, but you could get the installer if you'd like. I'm going to run the portable version, the 64-bit. And so go ahead and download that and start it up, and you will see a session manager. And so we're actually going to be able to connect to our MySQL database server using HeidiSQL. There are other programs out there that are somewhat equivalent, but HeidiSQL is free and pretty full-featured for the way that I use it anyways. So I create a new server. Network type I'm going to set to MariaDB or MySQL SSH tunnel. And so effectively what we're doing is, just like PuTTY logs into our server remotely, we're going to be able to do the same from HeidiSQL. It's going to log in remotely, but for all intents and purposes, a Linux system is going to consider us logged in as a local user. Okay, so what we need to set up here is our host name, and that is going to be 127.0.0.1. We are going to type in our new account that we created, which is full perm. We're going to enter our password, and the default port is 3306. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit save for good measure. I'm going to go to the SSH tunnel page or tab, and you have to have plink.exe. Now you see up here we have PuTTY, and if you have PuTTY, then you have plink, and this is probably where it's located. C program files PuTTY plink.exe. Okay, our SSH host, that is going to be the IP address of the server itself. That is the LAN IP address. In my scenario, it's 192.168.11.10. We have the default port for SSH right now, our SSH username, and I'm going to go ahead and type user and the password, and you'll enter your information for your user account and your password. And I'm just going to tack a random number on here, the local port, and I'm going to hit save. I'll right click and I'm going to tell it to rename. So we're going to say Arabis MariaDB server. And now we hit open and we should be successful in logging into our server for the first time. And it's going to take just a few moments to complete. And there we are. This is our server right now. We don't have any information on it yet, but MySQL creates some particular information that it uses to run the server. For instance, the MySQL user table will show us the users that are on the system. And so if we go to the data tab, we can see that. And so here are all of the columns in that table. Quite a few. Now, one nice thing about IDSQL is that you can manage the users using the graphical environment now. We see the one that was created already. We created the full perm, and you can add a user account, and then you can decide its username, password, and the host that it can log in from, and then you can give it very specific permissions. For instance, if we click on this, we see global privileges, and if I wanted to change that and restrict a user, I could just uncheck some of these boxes here, and then it would affect the permissions for that user. So very handy. And you can import data. We can load an SQL file. We can run an SQL file. If you want to run straight queries on your server, you just go to the Query tab. And if you want to do another query without erasing this one, you just click here and you get a second tab that opens up. And so if we want to run that same command, select everything from MySQL.user table, F9 will run the command, and there we go. There's the exact same information. So you can run commands here. You can import your data, you can export your data. Very full-featured piece of software, and it's free. And of course, that's the best part. All right, so we can delve into this a little bit later as to all the functions that IDSQL has. Now we've come back to our terminal here, and I want to show you a little trick here regarding the commands we entered for MySQL. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as the root user, and I'm going to go to my home folder, and you're going to notice a file that begins with a period, which means it's a hidden file, MySQL history. And we're going to go ahead and cat that file, and you will see here are all the commands we issued over the command line to MySQL. Do notice that the password you enter will be there in clear text, but also realize that this file is only visible to the root user, and so no one else should be able to access it as long as they don't have your root password. And if they had that, well, then they can change your root password and they can do anything they want. So it's not really a security issue unless you think it is. Okay, so since we're back at the terminal, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my limited user account. I'm going to clear this screen. And now I'm going to show you bandwidth usage in real time. We downloaded the nload package, and it defaults to showing you the bandwidth in kilobits per second, which to me is not very useful. So I type the -U and then a capital M. The capital M will show me megabytes per second. If I do K, a capital K, it's kilobytes per second. Meanwhile, little k is kilobits and small m is megabits. So I want to see it in megabytes per second. And then you can also specify which network interface you want to see these statistics for. And so my particular interface right here is ENP0S3. I go ahead and execute that, And you see it tells me the total bandwidth, and then it tells me the current, the average, minimum, maximum, and you'll see right now it's only showing 1 of 1 for interfaces. If I would not have specified an interface, it will actually show you all of them, and you can cycle through them. This number will be higher, and you can use the right and left arrow keys to switch back and forth. So we have incoming data and outgoing data, and I'm going to go ahead and download a file, and you'll see what happens over here when I do that. Alright, and there you go. You see we're downloading now, and we have our current pace. It updates, I think, on average every half second. And then you have your upload bandwidth. And so download is pretty cool. You can see your bandwidth in real time. Alright, in order to quit this, you type the letter Q, and then it puts you back on your command line. Okay, I want to show you the log file for the web server for Abyss. And I'm going to pull that up from WinSCP here. You'll notice every so often you see this info.php. If, for instance, you had a web resource and you want to see all the times it appears in your log file, we're going to go to the terminal and we're going to use grep to find it. It's a handy way of searching your log files very quickly. So I'm going to type sudo. I'm going to type cat/home/abyss, the Abyss web server folder, the log file folder, and then the access.log file. Okay, so there's the file itself, and then if we go ahead and tack on the grep command, then we can type info.php, and we probably need to put it in quotes. Here's the output from that command. You notice the lines are truncated with the end of the putty window here. And you can expand your window if you like to get around that. And so you see every line has info.php in it. And this one happens to because info.php is in the HTTP referrer header. And so just a handy way to search your log file. You can also search it for the number 404. And if you want to get just results with the 404, you can put a space on either side of it. And this will show us from the log file the queries that people have put at your web server where the file was not found. And you'll see this favicon.ico file doesn't exist on my server, and so it generates a 404 error, which is the not found HTTP status. And so just some handy things you can do with grep. I will show you one more, and this one is pretty handy. I'm going to type the find command, and I'm going to tell it to search the root of the file system. I could specify a directory that I want to look into, and I'll just specify the root there. -type f, so that's a file. -mtime or modified time 10, and this is default in days. -iname, and then quote star.php, so it's going to find every PHP file that has been modified within the past 10 days. And then I'm going to give it a command to execute ls-l, opening and closing brace, and then a backward slash and a colon. I'm going to go ahead and use sudo with this since I'm running under a limited user account. And that way it can search all the directories. And there we go. So we've found 2. And you'll actually notice they're both info.php. The reason for that is when you do a bind mount, everything that is in the home Abyss, abyssws/htdocs shows up in the public HTML. And so just be aware of that, because we did the bind mount in our /etc/fstab file, or fstab file. Everything that is in a directory, when you do a find command and it turns up in the results, you're going to see it twice. And so it gives you all the data because for every file it found, we told it to execute this ls-l. And so just a handy way to look for files maybe you modified within the past day. You could turn that down to 1. And so just something handy to keep around in perhaps a notepad document so that you can call it back at a later time. All right, we've covered quite a few things today. We installed some packages. We installed MySQL. We hardened our MySQL installation by typing sudo mysql _secure _installation. And then we downloaded Heidi SQL. We logged in after we created a secondary user, the full perm. For whatever reason, you can't log in as the root MySQL account using Heidi. That's just the way it is. So we made the full perm user and we logged in with Heidi SQL over SSH. We have searched our log files with grep. We've looked at the network bandwidth utility endload, and we explored the find command a little bit. And so hopefully it's been a helpful tutorial for you. And next tutorial, we will look forward to enabling HTTPS in the Abyss web server as they make that an automated, very painless, and easy process. So that'll be the next tutorial. That'll be it for this time, and I'll catch you later.